People don't really understand until they've experienced trauma and shock. The response that you have is so varied, and you can't really control it. She made her ascent into heaven. I began my gradual descent into a world of spiritual confusion and emotional pain, and I had never experienced that in my life. Human beings are meant to love each other in times of darkness when they don't love themselves. Auntie Anne's was number one, a gift from God. My name is on the store fronts, but it was never about me.
Welcome to The Human Experience. I'm Jennifer Peterkin, and this is episode 31, Anne's Story. Anne Beiler is better known by her professional moniker, Auntie Anne of Auntie Anne's Pretzels. She and her husband Jonas started their pretzel company out of a desire to provide for their family while also serving those in their community that needed a helping hand. But the road that carried them there was long and at times quite harrowing. What I especially loved about talking to Anne is she is, of course, this larger-than-life personality. I mean, who hasn't at least smelled the enticing scent of a cinnamon sugar pretzel while casually strolling from American Eagle to Bath & Body Works? But it's clear that the business she built and then sold pales in comparison to the relationships in her life. Her focus, her gratitude, her happiness all rest in the relationships she has cultivated throughout her life, the most important one being with that of her husband. Anne has known suffering. She has known deep, soul-crushing grief, but she has also found redemption and peace and unfettered joy in the connection that we were all made for. I do want to offer a content warning before we start. This episode contains conversations around child loss and sexual abuse, as well as brief mentions of suicide.
So I think it's interesting. Your daughter's living next door to you, and you lived next door to your parents, right? Mm-hmm. You lived on the same property. So it's kind of history
That's right.
Coming full circle here.
Right. That's right.
That's really nice that you, I imagine, spent a lot of time with them, but they lived apart from you for quite a while.
Yes, we've been in and out as far as living close by, but most of our lives we've been together in the same town or a couple of minutes apart or whatever. But you're right, we live right next to our parents on the farm many years ago. And our oldest daughter now, the one that saw the accident with our daughter when she was killed, she's the one that's living next door to us now. Yeah. And then the craziness and the fast growth of the company from one store to two stores in 1 year. I mean, the plan was simply one store. So we had no plan to do anything but one store. Right. So the next year then we did 12, and the following year we did 35. So within 3 years we had about 50 stores. And it totally, I could almost cry about this sometimes when I think about it, but it totally interrupted our family life.
Yeah.
And we didn't know how to stop it or didn't know how to manage the intensity of this. But during that time, then the girls, they just became part of Auntie Anne's. So in a way, at that time, it was like a gift. Like Auntie Anne's was number one, a gift from God. And then to have the girls, they were 11 and 16.
Wow.
And Angie would have been in the middle there, our daughter that's in heaven. So those are, pretty critical times in their lives, but they both ended up just being part of our company. They went to work at the stores, and Luana, the oldest one, became a trainer at the age of, 17, 18. She was traveling around Pennsylvania, Maryland, New Jersey, New York at the age of 18. Even while she was going to high school, she was doing on weekends and stuff. So I'm saying all that to say that, we were intact, but it's the business that really kept us together. But no more family dinners, like it was just gone.
Yeah.
Then throughout the years, the living together close by, our oldest daughter got married, moved to California. Our youngest daughter had a baby, and she was 22, was not married. And then they lived in Texas for a little while, for a few years. And so anyway, it's been in and out. But then as Auntie Anne's really got established, I would say 91 to till the time we sold, for the most part, we were close together in the same area. So 10 years ago, we moved from Pennsylvania to here. Long story, I won't tell that story. But it was a story of surrender is what it was. And we came here because our youngest daughter had moved here about 6 months prior. And our oldest daughter, Luana, moved to Arizona. So we were all together in this small town, 2 minutes from each other. And the grandkids were small. It was wonderful time of our life, just great. And so when the surrender issues started like getting into our head, into our heart, and finding, oh my gosh, yes, surrender, okay, everything, yeah, all right. And that meant, we didn't know this at the time, but at the end of the day, we surrendered everything, like our homes, our properties, our ministry, everything. So if God tells you something, he means exactly what he's saying. And as we realized at the end of the day, when everything was said and done, I remember driving down the road and I said to my husband, like, wow, when God said everything, he really meant everything. And that just, I wasn't ready for that. You know, I thought when God asked us to surrender everything, I thought he meant, you know, we'll live in the same area, the kids will still be with us. I was thinking of things, you know, the property, but that was quite a journey. It took me a number of years, literally, to grieve that.
That's a really interesting distinction. And I love that you talked about it with your business, how it affected your family. And, you know, you have this wildly successful business. You have a family that you are very close with. You come from a very close-knit community. So to experience that kind of physical closeness, but almost emotional distance by necessity is a very interesting distinction that I don't think we often talk about when we talk about like family business. So I appreciate you mentioning that. But talking about your community that you come from, so you grew up in the Amish and Mennonite community, correct?
Correct.
Being from Pennsylvania myself, I'm very familiar with that community, at least who they are, but I think not everybody knows who the Amish and the Mennonite communities are. So if you wouldn't mind kind of just explaining what that community is.
There were 3 sects of Amish culture. It's the Old Order Amish, and then there is the Amish-Mennonite. When I say Old Order Amish, it means that you are Amish and you speak Pennsylvania Dutch and you drive a horse and buggy.
Okay.
And no, I mean, that's Old Order Amish. The Amish-Mennonite, back in the day, they were called the black car Amish, meaning we could have a car, but it had to be black. You're no longer Old Order Amish. I mean, the Amish and the Amish-Mennonites, there's like great gulf between them. We know the difference, but the world doesn't see it.
Right.
Right? So it's the Old Order and then Amish-Mennonite. We can have a black car and electricity. And my dad and mom left the Amish against my mother's wishes. She never wanted to leave because Amish is all about family. That's number one. And some people almost see it as a cult. You know? I don't see it that way. I see it as, yeah, it's a very strong, you know, dad's the head of the house, mom is the housekeeper, mother raises the children. I mean, they still are very traditional with family and faith. So I don't feel like I came from any kind of an occult at all. So mom and dad were Old Order Amish until I was 3. And then we went to the black car Amish. And so my dad left the Old Order Amish because he did not want to farm with horses. Well, that's a big deal because when you leave the Amish, they do everything within their power. Like when you leave, they actually come and visit you for, I want to say it's 6 weeks every Sunday.
Wow.
And they come to your house if you're a member of the church. I was never a member of the Old Order Amish church. I was a member of the Amish-Mennonite, and they don't do that. But the Old Order Amish, if you leave, like mom and dad, they get the Amish visitors every Sunday, and they come into your house and sit there. I don't know how long, but long periods of time, like 45 minutes, maybe an hour or whatever. It's to let you know they strongly disagree, disapprove, and then you're shunned. Shunning means that they don't take any money from you. Like if they come to your house for dinner, you have to sit at a separate table, or if I go to an Amish person's house, not today anymore, but back in the day, and they still do this, the Old Order Amish. Not for me because I was not a member, but my mom and dad were shunned. And my mother did not want to go because she loved her family. And she was the first of 11 kids in her family to leave. So it was a heartache for her. But my dad, there was 9 in his family, and it was hard for him too, but he was a little more outgoing, a little more vivacious, and he was kind of always, you know, not rebellious, but he just was more adventurous. You know, and didn't really care. Okay, so the Old Order, the Amish-Mennonite, black car, electricity, tractors we didn't have radios, or we had no, back in the day, no record players, and there was no electronics in our home, no TV. But you know what we had, Jen, was family. And the older I get, the more I understand and feel the beauty of God's plan for family. But anyways, my husband was raised Old Order Amish.
Oh, okay.
Old Order Amish. So when he was 16, he didn't want a horse and buggy. So his dad said, well, if you don't want a horse and buggy, then I'm not going to help you get a car. He was not a member of the church, so he was not ever shunned. But at 16, then he went out to a junkyard and bought a car and fixed it up. So he became a body man. I mean, God used all of that, and he ended up being a body man from that point on and fixed people's cars until Auntie Anne started.
Wow.
So then the two of us, he comes from the Amish, I come from the Amish-Mennonite, and the two of us got married then in the Mennonite church. So it's Old Order, Amish-Mennonite, then Mennonite.
Okay.
That's kind of the progress that you go through. If you leave the Old Order Amish, I'm not Amish today and look like I do tomorrow. You just don't do that. You can't.
Yeah.
Because everything is you're so ingrained.
Sure.
A real dear friend of mine, she left the Amish and did that, like from Amish to English, we call ourselves. I mean, they would call us English. And she said she went to the mall, and it was so bad for her. I mean, she couldn't hardly take it. And she came home from the mall and decided to be Amish again.
Wow.
So the internal, the teaching and the training and the biblical, I mean, they really,
There's a lot there.
Absolutely. They spiritualize it a lot. And God said so, So it is the fear of God, right? Mm-hmm. And so my husband and I, when we got married, both had become Christians earlier in our life. Oh, well, then we get married. I'm 19, he's 21, and we get married in the very, very plain Mennonite church. And that was our process, our progression from Old Order Amish to Mennonite. And then from there, we went, I've been to Charismatic, Pentecostal, Assembly of God, Baptist. We've been to non-denominational, so we've been in Lutheran churches. So we've been involved in many churches since that. So I believe there's just a big smorgasbord of churches and under the body of Christ, and go where you feel comfortable, and where you feel connected. And that's really what we continue to do. So
that's beautiful. I love that. But I appreciate the explanation of that, because I, even being familiar with the Amish community, didn't realize that there were three kind of differences within that community. So I appreciate that. When we hear Amish, I think it's like, horse and buggy, no electricity, and that's it. But even the rules of the shunning, I didn't realize either. So I appreciate the information.
Well, the shunning part now, some families are very strict, other families are not. It really depends on the family of origin. But Old Order, they still, to this day, they shun you when you leave. But you have to remember, I mentioned it's all about faith and family. And so because family is so strong, depending on your family as to whether or not, how long do they shun you. Some is for life. I mean, that's the rule. Yeah. For life. But then there are others who eventually just your family, and it doesn't matter. Yeah. So I was on a show at one point, Anderson Cooper's show, and I said, what people don't know about the Amish is that they are strongly family, strongly faith, but the part that nobody knows is because you look at them and think they're so stoic, like they're just so, I said, Amish people know how to have fun. They just know how to have fun with their families and spend time with family. And that's what most people don't see, but they really are crazy funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that insight. And how did your parents' families react eventually?
Eventually, mom and dad, reconnected with their parents. And my oldest brother still remembers the very first time he went to my grandfather's house in a 1954 Black Mercury. My brother at that time would have been maybe 6, but he remembers every detail about that. I can't explain it to you. When I left the Amish-Mennonite church and went to the Mennonite church, that's when I decided to cut my hair. And eventually I stopped wearing a covering, like a hair veiling. And man, I struggled with that for 3 or 4 years. Sure. Like, I just can't do this. Like, I can't do this. Take my covering off and cut my hair. And when I did, my dad, he didn't speak to me it wasn't unkind, but when I would come home, he would leave for about 3 months. Wow. Even though he was no longer Old Order Amish, but still the cutting your hair, not wearing a covering, that is such a big deal. And so that's almost as hard as actually leaving the old Order Amish church and going to another church. Sure. Because it's so ingrained in you.
Absolutely.
That you can't pray without your prayer bill on.
It's really just a question of culture at that point, and
Absolutely.
generational differences, right?
Absolutely.
So, and we all struggle to kind of move into our own, and some things we take with us and some things we leave behind.
That's
and
right. That's right. And if you want to understand the Amish better, I feel like they're not so much a religion as they are a culture.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, it's clear. It's a culture. It's kind of like people ask me about the Amish people and say, why do they do this? And my explanation for that is it's really difficult to explain why. I mean, it's tradition and it's culture.
Right.
That's why they do it.
That is the beginning and end of it.
That's this. And so if you understand that, then the whys are kind of like, oh, okay.
Well, clearly you have such a thread of family in your life. You lived on a farm with your parents,
yes,
correct?
I got married, yes.
Well, not with your parents, but on the same property as your parents. And that is how, I mean, you talked about giving up and surrender later in your life. And I'm here thinking about all of the things you've surrendered prior to that at the quote unquote beginning of your story. You surrendered your daughter ultimately. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about that experience and how it put you on the path that you ultimately went on?
Well, as I talked about my history, growing up, I truly believed, and nobody really said it in these words, but all of my life, I knew that life is good and God is harsh. Like, we never had any tragedies in our family of 8 kids, or 8 of us, and nothing major, happened in our life. Life is good and God is harsh because we were taught to keep all the 10 commandments. And if I break one of those, God will be very displeased with me. And so I made a decision to be a good girl. And in the Amish church, if you do something really bad against the order of the church, you sit on the front row of the church and you make a public confession.
Oh, wow.
And I saw that many times. And I don't know, as a little girl, I mean, I remember clearly, I was probably, 5, 6, 7, very young. And I decided I'm never going to do that. I mean, I'm going to be a good girl so that I don't ever have to make a public confession. So it was very ingrained in me to be a good girl, a good wife, a good mother, someone who serves people in the community and love God and serve him. And if I do all that, then God will be pleased and he will bless me. So going into our marriage, that's pretty much what I believed. So we were married about 7 years, and we had 2 daughters, Luana and Angela Joy. They were about 2 years apart, and we were just living our dream. I mean, that was our dream. We never sat around the table in my house on the farm as a kid talking about what are you going to do when you grow up? The word career, it never occurred.
Yeah.
So basically, I wanted to have my own family, find a really good man, and have my own family, just like mom and dad, Yeah. So that's where we were living. But during that time, when Angie was born, we got involved in a charismatic church, and all the things that Daddy, didn't like about us, like cutting our hair, not wearing our covering, we got involved in a charismatic movement back in the 1970s, early 70s. It was you're too young to remember that, but there was a huge move of God across the country, and we got caught up in that as well. So my dad, obviously his heart changed toward us, and we ended up having a wonderful relationship with my mom and dad. And we ended up building a church. He gave us 10 acres of land off of his farms. So we built a church, a little bit like Auntie Anne's. We didn't know anything about build a church. There was 11 of us. Yeah. That we just had this vision. We want a church where we can experience freedom and worship, and coming out of the Amish and the Amish-Mennonite and then the Mennonite, we wanted to be free, right? And so we built a church on my dad's farm, 10 acres. And it was during that time, Jen, it was the most hard to explain, but I mean, God just became real to us. It was no longer religion or mom and daddy's Jesus or God. It was, he became our God, my Savior, my Redeemer, I just couldn't get enough of Jesus in those days. I just read the Bible, and we had our 2 children, and we were just on the right path, I mean, life is good, and the God is harsh thing kind of began to fade because everything was good. Yeah. I mean, I'm doing exactly what I know God wants me to do, and he's blessing us, right? And in the middle of all that is when Angie went up to my mom and dad's. We lived just a few hundred feet from each other. In the middle, we had a barn that my dad was making stone siding, and my sister drove the bobcat, and she would load and unload sand for him every day. And she knew the girls were around there, and she would always look for them. And very often she'd swoop Angie up on the bobcat and just take her with her. And Angie was her best buddy. I mean, they were together all the time. She was supposed to be in my sister Phi's wedding 6 weeks then after she was killed. My sister Phi got married, and So it was in that very exciting time in our life. And I just knew that God had a wonderful plan for us, but I didn't know what that meant. And I didn't understand that we had to go through some very devastating things. I want to say that out of our pain, our purpose was born. And it's more than just Auntie Anne's. It's our purpose has become to be compassionate and to be helpful and to maximize what God truly wants from us. Not so much to do as much as it is to be everything he wants us to be. And then as we be, then the doing part is just an outgrowth of being. And so anyway, that just really, looking back, we understand that now. But during that time, Angie walked up to my mom's house that morning, which she did every morning almost. And she loved to eat. And she would eat anything that you put on her plate. It didn't matter, sour, sweet. She just loved to eat. And so my mom always enjoyed her coming up there for the breakfast. And that particular morning, as she walked out the front door, I stood there and I watched her because we were saying goodbye. We had guests at our house that night. And we had a big breakfast, and it was kind of a busy morning. And Jonas took the guests that we had in the car, and he was taking them somewhere. And Angie slipped out with everybody, and I stood at the door. I'm waving goodbye to all the guests, and I'm watching her off to my right, and she's heading to Mom's house. And I watched her until she walked around the corner because I kept thinking, I should call her back and get her dressed for the day, which I always did. But this morning, because of the extra activity, I didn't call her back. And so I went back into the house and I went to the phone and I picked up the receiver to call my mom and say, Mom, Angie's on the way. And when I did, right in that moment, I heard just horrendous screaming and yelling and shrieking. And I had never heard anything like that. And instantly I knew that Angie was gone. I knew that because, the connection that moms and dads have with their children, particularly mothers, that intuition, that knowing is so deep in your heart, in your mind, in your belly. I mean, it's always that way. Even my kids at this age, I still know. But anyway, in that moment, I knew she was gone. So I ran to the front door, and my dad at that time was running toward me, holding Angie's limp body in his arms. And all you could say was he was just wailing. And all he could say was, I think she's dead. I think she's dead. I think she's dead. And I ran out and he wanted to hand her to me. And I didn't know what to do with her. And so I just laid her on the ground because I didn't know what to do. And then I realized, no, I need to pick her up. So I picked her up and my thought was, I want to run away with her. That's all I could think of. I have to run away with her. And I don't remember where I ran or what I did, but I've been told that I just kept running. Eventually, I ran up to my dad's house with her and my dad running after me, and we got in the car and we took her to the clinic. People don't really understand until they've experienced trauma and shock. The response that you have is so varied, and you can't really control it. So I get in the car and all the way down to the clinic, which was only a couple minutes from our house. We lived in the country, but the clinic was just maybe 4 minutes from our house. And all the way down, I could not look at her. And I thought, I don't know how to hold a dead child. I don't know how to do this. I kept thinking, I don't know how to do this. And at one point I looked down and I realized that she's gone for real. I knew then she was gone. So we get to the clinic and I just walked into the front door. I held her like I'm totally all together, like stoic. I never shed a tear. I laid Angie on the counter in the clinic and I said to the nurse, I think she's dead. From that point on, they scurried around and took me into another room. And, I wanted to be a good girl. And I knew if I was good that God would bless me. It's such a bad theology. What I know today is that life is hard. God is good. Don't confuse the two. I was confused because I believed that life should be good. I'm a Christian. It should be good. And God is harsh. If I'm sort of bad, he'll be displeased. But I don't say why God, because the why God part of it is simple to me now. I don't know. It sounds heartless. It's just that I understand now from my own experiences. Life is hard.
Yeah.
Doggone it.
Yeah.
It's hard. And I would rather understand that life is hard than to believe that God is harsh. Because Jennifer, he has done nothing but love me and be patient with me, been gracious, forbearing. I mean, the grace that I have received in my life is more than I thought was available for one person. And when Angie died, I knew that day, I knew in my heart where she went. It was a little bit comforting, but she made her ascend into heaven. I began my gradual descent into a world of spiritual confusion and emotional pain, and I had never experienced that in my life.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what to do with that. There were no grief books. There were no grief groups. There were no, I didn't hear a message on how to deal with grief. So Jonas and I, even though we were spiritually in tune with Jesus and each other, we didn't have the vocabulary to tell each other how we felt. We didn't know how to do that. Yeah. So the only thing we could do was be quiet. And so we lived in a silent relationship, continued to go to church. We had support initially, like most times you do, for a few weeks, maybe a couple of months if you're lucky. People remember. And I'm not mad about that. It's just that it's just the way it is. I mean, yeah. But as time went on and we couldn't talk about it, I didn't want to talk about Angie because I thought if I would talk about her, people would feel sorry for me. And if I would start talking about her, I thought I would cry, and I didn't want to cry. So really, in those moments, because of my sister, immediately I knew something inside of me said, you have to be strong for Vi. And you have to be strong for Luana, my oldest daughter. Well, okay. That was all very kind of subtle, but it was clear. I needed to be strong, yeah. Right? And so as a Christian, I really felt like I'm going to be strong, and I'm not going to, act weak. So that began my journey of pretending like everything. I couldn't be real. I didn't realize that then like I do now, but to try to be somebody that you're not is so not okay. It's so not healthy. For me, it only took me down into this abyss. I kept going further and further down. 4 or 5 months later, I went to my pastor because I knew I had to talk to somebody. And I actually asked God, please send me somebody that will talk to me. Wow. And I ended up in my pastor's office because I felt like that's what...
It's a very natural direction.
It's what they're there for, pastors. But as I spent about an hour with him, and as I left his office that day, he took advantage of me. Well, the despair of Angie was one thing. The grief of her death was one thing. But I tell you, that experience, I didn't know anything about sexual abuse or abuse of spiritual power, or I didn't even know anything about adultery. I didn't even know people. I just didn't know. I was just very naive to that world. Today, it's in your face everywhere you turn, in your family, your friends, wherever. But back in the day, I didn't understand what he did to me. He took advantage of me. So I walked out of the office and I decided I'm not telling anybody what he did because nobody would believe me. Everybody loves him. He's our pastor. But what I did was I made a choice to keep a secret. And that's my message today. What you choose today is the life that you will live tomorrow. Every single choice impacts your future. That one choice that I made, I had no idea that I would stay in nearly 7 years of sexual abuse on a regular basis with this pastor and still attending church. That took me into the dark world of sexual abuse. And when I say took me into the dark world, that's exactly what it did. I didn't know anything about the dark world. There's many ways and many things that will happen to us that we find ourselves in a dark place where we keep secrets. And what happens is you survive outwardly, but inside you're dying every day. Nobody knew for almost 7 years. And I weighed 90 pounds. And in the midst of that, we had our youngest daughter. And the pastor at that time was abusing me. And when he found out I was pregnant, he was horrible. It was terrible. So then I knew then that, okay, I'm going to have to do whatever he wants me to do because I don't want him to be mad at me. The truth is when you're in an abusive relationship, your abuser is your only lifeline. Well, actually, it's your only line to death. You die a little bit every day and nobody knows. And that was my life. And, that life, when I found myself that I weighed 90 pounds, I thought I was having heart attacks twice. My stomach was in a constant turmoil. I went to check to see if I had ulcers or something wrong. Nothing wrong. No, what's wrong? No, nothing wrong with you. What's anything going on in your home? Is anything stressful? I'm like, nope. Wow. Okay. Living in denial is such a horrible way to live, and yet we try to do that because we don't want anyone to know what's actually going on in my life. And we don't want anyone to really know who I am. I didn't want anyone to know how bad I was. Now, I knew I was a bad girl. I knew I was a bad girl. I mean, I crossed the line. I knew I crossed the line of God's grace. There was no doubt in my mind. And so if I can't accept God's grace for me, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to punish myself with guilt and shame. And during those 7 years, I had a friend call me up, and I didn't tell her the whole story, but I just told her, I feel like a bad girl. I said, I just want to run away. I want to find a new husband. I just can't bear the pain of my family anymore. I want to run away. And she just looked at me and she said, Anne, you really don't want to leave Jonas, do you? And I'm like, yeah, I do. I do. That's total despair. You just truly get to the point where you just don't care. You don't know how to make anything work to where I can get out of this. So anyway, it was during that time, I obviously didn't leave Jonas. We're married almost 55 years. God is incredible. And it also took a lot of hard work on our part. But during that time, I get a call from somebody in Sweden, someone that I knew very well, but he never called me. He called me one day and asked me how I'm doing. This is God's grace. Throughout all of this, Jen, God just somehow visited me every now and again with something very amazing to where it let me know that he still loves me, right? So this person called me and they said, hey, how are you doing? I'm like all perky. Of course, I was always just fine.
Yeah.
I'm always just fine. I never told anyone how bad I was feeling. So anyway, we're talking a little bit. And then he said, I just feel like God asked me to call you to encourage you. And I'm like, He said, is everything okay? And I said, sure, everything's fine. He just was silent on the other. He said, so what about your family? Are you okay in your family? And wow, everything is, like right on the surface. It's right. Yeah. All of the pain that we're feeling is really not that deep.
Yeah.
If you ask the right question, you can break through,
yes.
Right? Well, he asked the right question, and I just started sobbing. Couldn't stop crying. And then he said, oh, okay. He just kept saying, okay. Fine, he said, Anne, God told me to call you and tell you that you're not a bad girl.
Wow.
How could he have known?
Yeah.
You're not a bad girl. God has forgiven you for every sin in the past, every sin that you've committed today, and every sin that you will ever commit tomorrow. His grace, he said, covers it all. I'm like, wow. Well, okay, so that was, those kind of things occasionally would happen to me. But to me, that's God's grace magnified. It was like a megaphone screaming at me, like, yes, there's enough of grace for you. Over the years, eventually I got to the point where I told my husband my secret, and that's a whole other story.
Yeah. Honestly, I just, first of all, thank you for your vulnerability, because I truly do think that there are so many people trapped in that darkness that don't know how to say anything.
Exactly.
You don't know what to say or who to say it to. So to hear other people that have lived through that and come forward is such a blessing to so many, truly. But there is so much trauma that you experienced. And I find it really interesting how you've lived that out and where your relationship with God is today, especially having a pastor be the one that really doled that abuse out to you. Yeah. How did you reconcile that with your faith? Because there's a lot of people that have experienced spiritual abuse and physical abuse from spiritual leaders. How do you reconcile that to then come back around to God is so good? Well,
when you're in that kind of pain, you're mad at the world. Like you're just angry at everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, it's somebody's fault, the pastor's fault. I mean, it was his fault. And then it was sort of God's fault that Angie was killed. You know what I mean? Like he could have kept her, he could have done some sort of a miracle. So God and the pastor are kind of like, I don't know why pastor did this to me. I don't know why God allowed this to happen to me. And then the third one was Jonas. Why does he not know how bad I feel? Why can't he comfort me? So I'm mad at all three the three men in my life, God, pastor, and Jonas. And so the one that saved me actually was my husband. And what people don't understand is that's what we're for. Human beings are meant to love each other in times of darkness when they don't love themselves.
Yeah.
It's really our job to be Jesus to people.
Yeah.
Right. Jonas was Jesus to me. If I wouldn't have had Jonas, there wasn't anyone in the whole world that could have loved me, even though I wanted to leave him initially because I broke his heart. So I'm praying for 7 years. God, deliver me. I mean, I knew I wanted to be delivered. I hated this life I was living, but I'm stuck. I don't know how to get out. So every day praying, God, please deliver me. Please deliver me. Tears, begging God, please deliver me. And he never delivered me. And that's kind of when I got mad at God. Like, I thought it was up to him, you know? And one day it was very, very clear to me. Get up off your knees, stop crying, and go tell Jonas. Huh. What a thought, right? The lie that I believed was that if I tell Jonas, he will divorce me. So I'm safe with my secret. Right. It was easier for me to keep my secret and contemplate suicide for real on 2 different occasions. It was easier to do that than it was to get up off my knees and go tell Jonas. That was just impossible. So I did, obviously. I mean, I'm a walking shell. There is nothing left inside of me to give anymore. There's nothing good about me. I was unlovable, unforgivable, and I was unchangeable. I'm stuck. This is my life. This is what it's going to be forever. I'll never be the same again. And I went to tell Jonas, and I had 2 sentences that I told him, very, very callous. I told him what I did, and I said, I'm sorry, and I'm a sorry person. And I walked away. I didn't hug him. He didn't respond because I couldn't bear looking at him. He looked so sad. Jesus wants to redeem everything that's wrong in your life. But we have to be responsible. My response to whatever happens to me, good or bad, is my responsibility. I can blame until I die, and that does nothing. It will never bring healing to me or you. We can blame the world. We can blame the pastor. We can blame whoever hurt you, but that won't heal you. So the day I got off my knees, I didn't realize this then, but I know it now, is that I became responsible. My response to what happened to me, that was one step. I took responsibility, and I told Jonas. I didn't realize this, but I hurt Jonas too. This was my secret. It was my thing. I'm not impacting anyone's life, only mine. Wow, what a lie, right? And I realized that day that this is devastating for him. And I was so afraid. I knew when he came home from work, he would tell me to leave. So I wait. The girls come home from school. Jonas comes home from work, and he stood in the kitchen and he said to me, we need to talk. And I'm like, about what? I had just told him my deepest, darkest secret, and I thought that was it. Like, how stupid, how ignorant, but that's just where I was.
Yeah.
And I said, about what? He said, well, you know what you told me today. I'm like, okay. I said, well, then will you please promise me that you won't rub my past in my face when we talk? He said, I promise. I'm like, wow, okay. And then he said, can you promise me that you won't leave in the middle of the night and leave a note on the dresser? I said, okay, I won't leave. But he said, if you want to go, let me know about it. We'll talk about it. I'll help you find a house, and I'll help you pack your bags. But you have to take the girls with you wherever you go because they need their mom. I'm like, wow, I did not feel like a good mother. I didn't feel like a good wife. I was not a good girl. I'm a bad girl now. And he wants me to take the girls with me. Wow, you cannot even imagine the spark in my belly that just was just a spark of hope. And that was the beginning of our redemption. That one secret, and what I want to encourage people to do, all of your listeners, if you have a really dark secret in your life, it will take you nowhere. I mean, except deeper and deeper and deeper into yourself and into your pain and into the dark places. But if you can find the courage, and I want to encourage you, find the courage. You may not want to tell your wife or your husband or your best friend, or, I'm not telling you how to do this, but you have to talk. You have to tell. There is no other way. I wish there was. Like, you can drink alcohol and try to think, oh, okay, that's going to take, or do drugs, or be involved sexually, go have sex, or you can eat like crazy, or become a workaholic to bury all this pain. And there's only one thing that will release you. Only one.
Yeah.
There's only one way into freedom. It's through Christ, number one. That's the freedom he gives us here in this life. But when you begin to live his lifestyle, and I went to confess, James 5:16, it says, simply it says, confess your faults one to another. I tell you what I'm doing, you tell me what you're doing, good, bad, ugly. If we confess our faults one to another, pray for each other, then we'll be healed. And that's what I did that day. And that was the beginning of my redemption. And that was the moment when I somehow knew that God would deliver me. We began that journey. It took us years, literally years. So if you have a deep, dark secret, telling this secret, you cannot predict the outcome of that. It's not about predicting, if I tell a secret, I hope that blah, blah, blah. No, you just do it because that's what you have to do for yourself. And when you tell your secret, when you do the one to another confession, it's a relational thing begins to happen. The people that you want relationships with begin to heal. So our relationship began to heal that day. But I mean, there were moments I thought Jonas was going to divorce me, but only because of my own guilt and shame. He never once, to this day, he has never made me feel guilty, never blamed me. He never rubbed the past in my face like, why did you do this to me, my family? Not one time. And he kept his promise.
Wow.
That's the love of Christ. He got on his knees and said, what do you want me to do, Lord? And God just said, love Anne like I love you. And then he said, how do I do that? And then Jesus said, I'll show you how. And that's my journey. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Wow. That's a beautiful story. And you even said it, your story of redemption. And as you're telling your story, that's the word that keeps coming to my mind is redemption, redemption, redemption. And it is so available. And we live in these spaces that we create for ourselves that tell us, and we tell ourselves that it's not, there is no redeeming what I've been through, what I've experienced, whatever that is. And it's just not true. And you're sitting here today to say that's not true. I mean, you have run the gamut here of experiences and trauma, and you're sitting in a beautiful home. You are married for almost 55 years. You have your daughters living next door. You built a incredible business. I mean, just amazing what you have accomplished in your life through being open to wherever God has taken you.
Redemption is full. God hasn't spared anything. But when you're in this dark place, life is over. And what you do is you simply survive. So first you're traumatized, and then you survive. And surviving is like you're out in the middle of the ocean on a raft, and you're trying to put so much energy into surviving that you cannot be who God wants you to be. Impossible. You cannot be, because you're just surviving. And then, so I feel like the next step then is to overcome. And the overcoming life, you find through the power of confession, through James 5:16. I call it the overcoming lifestyle. Today, it's how I live. So if I hurt you, hey, listen, I was hurt by somebody, no doubt about it. But in the meantime, I learned that I became the abuser, not necessarily abusing people sexually, but I became the one who hurt my children. I abandoned my daughters, emotionally abandoned them. The depth of that is even more than I can't even begin to talk about that. But the depth of what we do in our pain to survive. But listen, when you begin to talk, that is the beginning of your freedom. But you have to be willing, and you have to be courageous enough, and you have to trust somebody with your deepest, darkest secrets. And it needs to be somebody that can listen well. And it shouldn't be, I didn't want somebody to tell me what to do. I don't want Bible verses. I knew them all. I just wanted somebody to let me dump on them. I mean, I was full all the way up to my neck, my whole body. Your pain doesn't fly away somewhere out in the universe. It settles in your body. And when I began to talk, Jennifer, I could only do little bits and pieces. But I started. And man, it was hard. So I understand. It's so hard because you don't have the vocabulary. How do you talk about this stuff? But along the way, Jonas became Jesus to me, and he's a quiet man. You met him a little bit ago. But even in his silence, I knew he loved me. And about a year and a half after my confession to him, my sisters also were abused by my pastor. There was 3 of us girls during the same time in the same church, and our youngest daughter as well. But when all of it came out, then I began to reconnect again with my sisters. During that time, I couldn't connect with them. He had us totally separated. And my one sister at that time, she came out as well from the abuse. And she called me one day about a year and a half later. And she said, Anne, how are you doing? And I said, well, I can't explain it, but I just want to be with Jonas. There's something about his spirit that I just feel like I want to be close to him. And we had a wall phone at that time. So I'm down the hallway and he's in the living room. I thought he didn't hear, but he heard that. He was like, wow, something's changing, but he didn't know at that time. I was so shut down. I couldn't even hold his hand. So Jonas became Jesus to me. And I can't emphasize that enough. He's not my savior for my life, but God put him into my life to save me from myself. And I wish every woman would have a really good man. If you don't have that, then find someone that you can pour your life out to, a great friend that can be trusted, not someone that will tell anyone else. When somebody confides in you, let them know that your heart has the capacity to hear and to bear someone else's burden.
Yeah.
That's what Jesus wants us, to bear one another's burdens.
Yep.
This is how we do it. Other ways, if I get sick and I need food, that's so simple. We all can do that. But this is a much different kind of burden that we carry. Many, 1 in every 3 women, I think the number's higher, are sexually abused by the time they're 16.
Yep.
So we can all go into our marriages wanting to have a great marriage, and we're broken before we even get started.
Yeah.
So a good man truly has been my gift.
Yeah.
One of my greatest gifts.
Wow. That is so beautiful. I'm in awe, honestly, and I really just so value your story and you telling it so openly and honestly. I mean, we haven't even gotten to your business.
I know. Part two?
Yeah, right?
I don't know.
And again, I told you before this started, this is your story wherever you want this to go. So there's no rules as far as what you have to talk about. Obviously, we know that you created Auntie Anne's. And I do want to highlight that you created Auntie Anne's out of a desire to give something to your husband.
Yes. I can keep this really short, really. I know. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry.
Don't apologize. This was beautiful.
There's so much, and I try to be succinct about it. I know I wasn't, but my short story about out of our pain, our purpose was born. Jonas and I finally began to feel like a married couple again. In a couple of years, we were able to feel the connection, and it was like I was in amazement every day. Like, we're still together. God somehow kept us. Thank you, dear. Thank you so much for helping me. I would tell my husband. And so my husband, because he was a mechanic, he could fix anything, figure everything out, everything, all of our married life. And so when this happened, he was like, God, how? Why? How could this happen to us? We're a faith-filled family. We're serving you. We love each other. We had an intact family. How could this happen? And so he began then to study out of Emergent Ministries from Akron, Ohio, which was a counseling center. He met a man, the founder of that. He met him and did correspondence back in the day. And my husband is extremely dyslexic.
Okay.
And what he discovered, he knew he was dyslexic, never read a book in his life. But what he loved to do was word study. And he was able to begin to understand human behavior psychology, and he did many conferences. That's a whole other story. But through all of that experience, learning, then he got a degree in layman's counseling. And he started counseling. And he said, I'm going to do this as a free service because we didn't have to pay anybody to help us. So I'm not going to charge anyone. What we have received, freely give. Freely have received, freely give. So it was like, I just want to give to people what I know. And he began to counsel. And within weeks, he was just counseling 3-4 days a week. And so he didn't have a job. And that's why I went to work. And I started a small pretzel stand. It wasn't like Auntie Anne's back in the day. It was just, I'm selling pretzels so I can support Jonas. And I made enough money the very first week, which was amazing to where that he knew that he could keep counseling and I could do the work.
Wow.
So when I talk about redemption is full, it's complete. It's like God did not miss a thing. He completely provided for us. And so we're in Pennsylvania, moved to Texas, actually kind of followed our pastor to Texas during our abuse years. And everything blew up there, and then eventually moved back to Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So in 1988, we moved back in 1987. 1988, 6 months later, we bought our very first store. We had no money, but my rich father-in-law, who was Amish, gave us $6,000. We had no formal education. Jonas and I grew up Amish, so we graduated from the 8th grade. But we had no formal education. We had no money, and we had no business plan when Auntie Anne started. So God began this work. And we started selling pretzels like crazy. Like we perfected the recipe. It became our recipe. And it was just unbelievable. We got so busy selling pretzels, we couldn't make them fast enough. We had to get bigger ovens. We had to really put systems in place to be able to serve our customers at one store. Yeah. And then we had the second store 6 months later. And the next year we did 12 stores. And then the following year we did about 35 stores. And end of 1991, we started franchising. We didn't know anything about franchising, but that's what we were doing. And sort of by accident, and realized that we're franchising. We had to get all of our ducks in a row. We had to become legal. So it was quite a journey. But you know what? Every step of the way, God just helped us to do the right thing. And the big part about Auntie Anne's and the success of Auntie Anne's is the people that God brought to us.
Yeah.
I can tell you, Auntie Anne's, my name is on the store fronts, but it was never about me. I always knew it was never about me. It was all about God's plan, and it was all about the fact that he redeemed Jonas and I so that we could be together. Jonas is the one that really just encouraged me once again. You know, he said, I kept telling him, I can't do this anymore. I'm done 50 stores. I'm like, I can't do this. Yes, you can. You have whatever it takes. He said, I'm not good enough. I don't have education. We don't have very much money. Everybody I meet is a great business person. They're all wealthy. And finally it said to me one day, hon, stop whining and complaining about who you are, because there's nobody in the whole world that God called to be Auntie Anne. He called you to be Auntie Anne. And if he called you, then you're good enough, but become the very best you that you can be. And that's when I began to I went to seminars, and I read books on business, on franchising, leadership. And so if you want to know more about that story, I do have books out people can read. So why am I trying to say it all in one interview? I don't know.
Yeah, and we'll link to your books in the show notes for sure. And now, is Jonas still counseling?
Not anymore. He did it for almost 30 years.
I mean, I'm listening to you talk about what he said to you, and I'm like, he was in the right job.
Yeah, he was created. I mean, that was his purpose for about 30 years.
That's amazing. Yeah. You talk about the people that you were with, that you met, that you helped during your business years, growing your business. What was it like to know that you had this thing that you had created that was helping so many other people make their livelihoods?
Our greatest joy was knowing that we're making a difference in people's lives. It was great to be I loved making pretzels. That was fun. And I love customer service. I liked everything about business, although I never had any business experience, but I learned as I went. But the greatest joy, and our motto became, we give to get to give again. The first week at Auntie Anne's, we had no idea how much money we were going to make, or profit and loss. Who cares about that? I don't know. I'm selling pretzels and we're making a little bit of money. And at the end of the week, I couldn't wait to go to church the next morning and take $50 cash. We did $850 in sales in 2 days at a farmer's market. And I told Jonas, I can't wait. I'm going to give $50. I'm going to take that to church in the morning. So I slipped it in. Well, as time went on, we began to give $100 a week, and then $200. And then over time, thousands and thousands of dollars. So our motto was, we give to get to give again. So initially I thought that giving was to organizations and missionaries and local community people. And we did a lot of that too. But what I realized was that we give to our employees. And Jennifer, I tell you, I feel sad in my heart when I realize how many employees are so dissatisfied in the workplace. I'm not blaming all employers, that's not what I'm saying, but it's really up to the owner, the leader, the employer to create a space for your people where they will be so excited to come to work every day. And you don't have to be grand and glorious and popular. I wasn't. I knew nothing. But the thing that I know was probably what put us over the top was Jonas and I loved our people and we valued them. And when you do that, when you believe that your people are your greatest asset, well, then act like they are. Okay, in the morning, come in and say, good morning.
Yeah.
Like, notice everybody that comes into you. I mean, if you sit behind your desk, you don't even know if they showed up or not. You don't. I made my rounds every Monday morning to all of my employees in the office. And there's so many things we did that were no big deal, just out of my own heart. And Jonas and I wanted our employees to know that we appreciate them, because we knew if it wasn't for them, Auntie Anne's we wouldn't have got off of the ground with one store.
Yeah.
Even there, we needed 10 employees. So we valued all of our people. And the biggest factor, I feel like, if you value your people, then you will share your profits. And we did lots of bonuses. We did lots of giveaways. We did lots of just fun stuff to financially bless our people. And then I don't know, I want to say it was maybe year 5, 6 or so, we started to do a profit sharing plan. And every year from that point on till the time we sold the company, we experienced great profit and were able to share that with our employees. So if you say that people are your greatest asset, then treat them as though they are people of value. And so for us to be able to start the company in this small little, crazy little, dumpy little farmer's market, and then understand, God was growing us and he was growing the company and he's bringing all of these people. I began to understand that, as a business owner, you have influence on your people. And I was thinking, this is a great way to be Jesus. And I can tell you, God did not call us to be evangelists, but he did call us to be salt and light in the workplace. And great joy around the world, where today Auntie Anne's, we don't own the company anymore, but Auntie Anne's, I believe it's in about 25 different countries and in 49 states in the United States. Wow. And just to know in the back of my mind, every once in a while I think about this. Wow, the lives that have been impacted through Auntie Anne's, whether it's physically, financially, spiritually, emotionally, many people have been impacted, growing them up in their business. I mean, watching people grow as they come to Auntie Anne's. That's been our greatest joy. And I can tell you, Jennifer, if I would never have had the courage of the Holy Spirit within me, would not have gotten me up off my knees that day. I would be dead, number one, no doubt about it, because I was still going down. But number two, just equally important, is that if I would not have made that confession that day, there would be no Auntie Anne's.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a world without Auntie Anne's?
I can.
So the point in all that is, I want to encourage people. I don't know where you're at today in this dark place that you can't get out. I understand. But God has something for you. It may not be grand and glorious like a franchise all over the world, but he has life. Yeah. He has life for you to live. And once you get into this overcoming lifestyle, I cannot describe to you in this hour and a half that we've talked, I cannot describe to you how dark it was for me. I mean, I could try, but to actually, for you to get how dark it was for me and how bright the light is for me today, what I can say about the light is it still continues. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger and more free and more freeing. So it's not like, because I'm a Christian, I'm free in Christ. Well, it's true. But to actually experience the freedom of Christ through the overcoming life, to live a transparent, open, honest, be real, stop pretending, just be who you are. That's the best gift that you have to give to the world. Why try to be somebody you're not? Yeah. It's a trick of the enemy, really, is to make us feel small or feel like we have to hide or like I'm nobody or I wish I was like them or her or him. Find out who is it that God created you to be and work toward that.
I love it. On a personal note, I love that you started your business having no real formal education. My grandfather was the same way. He was schooled up until 7th grade, grew up in South Philadelphia to an Italian immigrant family, super poor, built his business. And today I'm the 3rd generation working at that business. So, I mean,
that's fantastic.
It can truly be such an incredible thing. And to just do it and be the best at it with what you have is the best thing you can do.
God created us for good works. It doesn't just like happen. Here we are. And it's just, no. There's a whole level of work and intense work. And I've always said perseverance. I learned that on the farm. What it means is you do what you don't feel like doing. And that's a good qualification for an entrepreneur. Just simply do what others don't feel like doing. Go a little further than everybody else, and you'll probably be very successful.
Yeah. Obviously, you've written multiple books. You're sitting here with me today. I know you've done interviews all over. You value story and what it can do in other people's lives. So what does that mean to you to share your story? How would you encourage other people to share their stories?
Well, first of all, you have a story. Okay. So you cannot believe how many people tell me, oh, I don't have a story. I'm like, excuse me.
Are you alive?
Your life is your story. So start telling your story. It doesn't have to be terrible. I mean, it doesn't have to be like mine, obviously. Everybody has their unique story. And so I encourage people to tell their stories, because as you tell your story, you discover more about yourself. When I began to tell my story, I began to feel a little freedom. And the more I tell, the more freedom I feel. Your story doesn't get bigger. But as you tell your story, you just see clearly who you were, who you are, and what you could become. And so I encourage you to just tell your story. Find someone that will listen to you. And as you tell your story, you will set yourself free.
Yes.
If you don't feel freedom with who you are, begin to tell your story. Just tell your story. Set yourself free and become the person that God created you to be, instead of pretending and hiding and wishing you were. So I've written a couple of books. One is the Overcome Lead, which is the last one that I've written. It's my story about business. And I tell my story. People think that, I'll wait till I have all my ducks in a row, and then I will start my own company, or I will start your business, and you will learn as you go. And you'd be surprised how you will overcome the obstacles if you know what your purpose is. I knew what our purpose was, and that purpose was always right in front of me. And so I overcame all the obstacles, my personal stuff. I had no self-esteem. I didn't even feel like I was qualified. Why would I feel I was qualified, right? But as I started the company, I began to lead. I overcame as I led people. So overcome and lead. Just start where you're at and strive to be the very, very best you can be. Do whatever it takes to learn more and to bring people into your circle.
Yeah.
And then the other one I wrote was called The Secret Lies Within. It's an outside look at overcoming trauma in my own life. And this is not a self-help book, but it does give you a little bit more insight about abuse and where it comes from and what to do about it. And again, my story is in that. And then I also have a little storybook. It's called Auntie Anne, My Story. It's a real quick little, 30 pages, pictures of me, and then stories about every little thing that was important in my life on the farm as I grew up.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And then we just launched, we are in the middle of launching, have just started launching our Come to the Table, our cookbook.
Cool.
So those are the books that we have available. And if you go onto my website, AuntieAnneBeiler.com, just go into the website and it will take you to our bookstore. You can get most of these on Amazon.com. I'm not sure about the cookbook right now, but check that out. But most of them you can get on Amazon.
Awesome. And we'll link to everything in the show notes and on social media, so people will be able to find it. So I just really appreciate your time today. I have one more question I asked to everybody, because it's such a big theme in what this podcast is about. But through the lens of your experience, what does it mean to you to be compassionate?
I think compassionate is movement. I think it means doing. I mean, I can say, I really feel sorry for you. But even Jesus said, if I feel sorry for you and you need $5, then I need to put my compassion to work and give you $5. I mean, that's a simple analogy. But I believe that compassion is doing. And just an example recently, I just, it's not big things that you do for God that count. Like your platform that you're on. The platform God gave me, that's important. I mean, God put me there. I didn't put myself there. So there is something that he requires of me. But compassion for me is noticing somebody in a store. And the other day, these are just an example.
Yeah.
So compassion, again, is doing. Let's work with the people that are right next to us, right? Our neighbors and people in our church or wherever you go. And so I'm at a store and I noticed a lady with two beautiful little girls, and they were just I just kept watching them. And what I've come to find out, Jennifer, is that when I notice somebody, like really notice them, that means I need to do something. And so these two little girls, they were asking their mommy they were speaking Spanish, and I didn't understand, but I knew what they were asking their mother was they wanted something from the store, right? Mm-hmm. And so I gave each of the girls a little bit of money, not much, and the mother. And money isn't everything. It's not like the love of Jesus, but let me tell you something. It is love. Mm-hmm. And this little mama, she just tears welled up in her eyes, and the girls you would have thought I gave them $1 million maybe or something. Okay, compassion is noticing somebody. And if you notice them, what can I do for them right now? You know, and most of us have plenty. And I've discovered that Auntie Anne Pretzel, a pretzel, and a little bit of money, a gift to somebody, whether it's $5, maybe it's $100, whatever. It doesn't really matter how much, but it speaks to the heart, because everybody needs food and everybody needs money. Mm-hmm. So compassion to me is just noticing people and seeing what I can do in that moment.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah, it is a verb. It's not something that you sit internally with most of the time.
Yes.
It requires movement. I think that's really important.
Thank you.
Really important. So, and thank you so much. I was thrilled to meet you, thrilled to be introduced to you, and your story is beautiful. The way that you tell your story is so open and honest, and I really value and appreciate that. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer. I really appreciate you inviting me onto your podcast. I've enjoyed it very much.
Thank you so much for listening to The Human Experience. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, share it with others, and leave a rating and review on your favorite platform. Everyone has a story, and I'd love to hear yours, so be sure to check out the show notes for more information about how to stay in touch. Do good and take care.